More new information from Joe Kissell about backing up your Mac. This is MacVoices. MacVoices is sponsored by Upstart, fair and fast personal loans. Go to upstart.com/MacVoices and find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is the second part of our conversation with Joe Kissell, the author of Take Control of Backing Up Your Mac, 4th edition. As Joe said in the first part of our conversation, there are a lot of things that have changed in regard to backing up your Mac effectively. Those include the M1 Macs, that includes Big Sur, and a whole lot more. In the first part, we talked about bootable backups, and it's something you're really going to want to go back and listen to. This time, we take on another piece of information from Joe's book that is equally essential and equally important that you know about and why it's a bit different now. So let's go back and let Joe do the talking. So we spent a lot of time here on bootable backups, but I think that's something that people really want to know because it is a confusing process. What other confusing processes or what other things have changed that might confuse folks out there who want to protect themselves? Because, I mean, for years now, we've been preaching backup, backup, backup. And I want to make sure that we, give folks an idea of what they need to be looking for when they go to buy the book.
Yeah. Actually, before we move on to the next thing,
oh yeah,
I want to say one last word about the bootable duplicates. So I have in my hands two different external SSDs. They both have the, USB-C connectors on the ends. They're about the same size, about the same weight. But this one is a USB 3 SSD, and this one is a Thunderbolt 3 SSD. These are more expensive. But if you have an M series Mac and you want to make a bootable duplicate using whichever method, you want to get the more expensive one because it's unclear why this happens or under what circumstances, but a lot of people have found that they can't actually boot their M series Mac from a bootable duplicate if it's on a USB 3 SSD, but only if it's on a Thunderbolt 3 SSD. Apple doesn't really say this anyplace. They don't clue you in that this is a problem, and you have to really look and say, well, how do I know? Like, it has the right connector. Well, I mean, this is how you know. There's a little number 3 on it. I don't know if you can see that, but anyway, that might be your only clue. You have to really look hard to make sure that you're getting the right kind. So just in the spirit of, a new thing you have to be aware of with the M1 Macs. By the way, I love my M1 MacBook Air. It's fantastic. I think I use that more than my iMac Pro now, which because the iMac Pro is obsolete. Who wants to use that? All right. So here's another new thing that is definitely very confusing. And I know that you have talked to Jeff Carlson about this. I will say a few more things about it. APFS Snapshots. So we all know how Time Machine works, or the way it has worked for many, many years. What used to happen was that every hour it runs, it looks, what's new and what's the same. And everything that's the same, it would just put in a hard link, which is sort of a relative of an alias, and takes almost no time and almost no space, but just sort of a record of, that thing is there in that place. And then for anything that was brand new, it would go ahead and copy that whole file. And this, depending on how much data had changed, this might take minutes, it might take quite a long time. So if your Mac has APFS, which it will if it is running a relatively recent operating system, there's now a new capability. And Time Machine can use this, but it can also be used outside of Time Machine. And that is an APFS snapshot. An APFS snapshot is this, it's part of the APFS specification, part of the underlying file system machinery. And it's weird. It's almost magical. It's like one of those quantum things. Like, how did they do that? How did they get those two, things to be entangled. I don't know how. Anyway, the thing is, an APFS snapshot acts as though it is a complete copy of everything on your data volume. And it takes less than a second to make. It doesn't take minutes or much longer like a time machine backup. It's almost instant, and it appears to take up almost no space. Not none, but a very small amount. And you look, there's like, wait a minute, I seem to have 2 copies of my how did that didn't take any time. Where is it being stored? How does that work? Okay, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the details. It's just Apple magic, you know. You don't need to know. You don't need to know the details. Just know that this is a thing that APFS does. It does this whether or not you have turned on Time Machine. And other backup apps can also they can make their own APFS snapshots that are identical in every way to the Time Machine backups. And they can access Time Machine's APFS snapshots. It doesn't matter. You can have Carbon Copy Cloner make APFS snapshots. You can have SuperDuper make ChronoSync, make them. Time Machine can make them. And then you can use any of those apps to restore the backups that the other app created. So they're fast. They are very, very efficient with space. They're super cool, and there are lots of ways to make them. But, because there's always a but, right? There's always a but. Your startup volume all by itself can store its own APFS snapshots. Of course, if you're storing a backup of whatever sort on the same volume, that doesn't really help you much, like if something goes wrong with that volume. So you really want to store your backups, including your APFS snapshots, on some other volume. New in Big Sur is the option for Time Machine to use APFS volumes as destinations, as targets. Now, it used to be that even though your internal drive is formatted as APFS, the Time Machine volume had to be HFS+. That is no longer true. It can still be, but it also supports APFS. And when your backup drive, whether used for duplicates or for Time Machine, is formatted as APFS, that's when you get the maximum mojo. That's when all of your backups can be as fast and as space efficient as possible. And you also get this sort of magical blending between, hey, looks like Carbon Copy Cloner instantly made a versioned backup of my entire drive. And look, that backup is showing up when I go into Time Machine. And look, the Time Machine backup is showing up when I go into SuperDuper. How is that possible? Don't worry about it. It's great. It works. But it's a new thing to get used to. And so, I go over all those details in my book and try to make you feel just happy that your backups are going to be faster and smaller now, and that's a great thing. There's that trade-off that the bootable duplicates are a bigger hassle, and you might have to invest in a new SSD, but there's benefits too.
I have to ask one question about the snapshots.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I apologize because I know you told me, don't worry about it. It's magic. All right. But I still got to ask. If I create a snapshot with Carbon Copy Cloner, SuperDuper, or whatever, all right, mm-hmm. I find that snapshot file, I copy it to an external drive, then I move it over to another Mac.
No, you're not going to do that.
Well,
no, I'm saying you really can't. You can't. APFS snapshots are not copyable. So it is the nature of APFS snapshots that although they act like the original files when they're right there on the Mac that created them, you can't duplicate the snapshots onto another volume. That won't work. It is not in the nature of APFS to function that way. So just discard those plans before you and think that you can't do that.
Okay. Well, I mean, and that's good because that's something. So the the only place a snapshot is good is on the Mac that created it.
That's 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 an approximation of the truth. It's did
You
I
make me
mention
sound like
there
a
are footnotes?
politician, Joe. Wait a minute.
Did I mention there are footnotes? Like everything has like a qualification and an exception. So let's say I have my my external SSD here. All right, and I made so this is not my boot volume. This is just my backup volume, and it's got its own backups. Also, it has APFS snapshots on it. Okay, the APFS snapshots that are on here were snapshots of this volume. That's fine. If I connect this to another Mac, no problem. I can still see those snapshots because what I have connected is the volume that the snapshots were made of.
Ah.
So that I was a little imprecise before, but
Well, no, but I mean, again, we're all trying to understand this stuff, and you have a great way of. First of all, you have the understanding, and then to communicate it to us. So that makes perfect sense. That the snapshot is of the volume. We need to stop thinking about these things as drives, but more as volumes.
yeah, it's just it's weird. I had to have this whole new explanation of like, okay, I was being a little bit loose with my usage of the term volume and partition and disk and drive before, because before it didn't matter. Some of these words were close enough in meaning that you could interchange them and it would be okay, or you'd get close enough to the truth. But boy, APFS volumes and partitions are just totally different animals than HFS plus volumes. They're just totally, totally different. You can't think about them the same way anymore. So I have had to be more rigorous and more precise in my usage in some ways and say, yeah, we're really talking about just this thing now.
MacVoices is sponsored by Upstart, fair and fast personal loans. Go to upstart.com/MacVoices and find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments. Upstart is your first step in cutting back those big credit card balances that come from high interest rates. Whether you need a loan to help with debt consolidation, education, personal expense, or large purchases, Upstart can help. Upstart is a different kind of lender. Their lending platform is based on artificial intelligence. That lets them evaluate your loan request based on more than just your credit score. Things like your employment history and income are also factored in so that you have access to smarter rates. Customers have rated Upstart 4.9 stars on Trustpilot and Credit Karma. They rank number 1 in personal loans for customer satisfaction on LendingTree and have been featured in Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, and CNBC. Shouldn't you be checking out what Upstart can do for you? Visit upstart.com/MacVoices. Find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today. That's upstart.com/MacVoices. Loan amounts will be determined based on your credit, income, and certain other information provided in your loan application. Upstart.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Upstart for their support of MacVoices. Okay, so I got to ask one more.
Okay.
Because you bring up an interesting point about the partitions. So if I have a drive that will support APFS, and can I partition it to have multiple volume backups? So in other words, let's say I'm going to make it up as I go, but 10 gig drive, and I want to break it into 10 1 gig partitions to be able to do 10 one-day backups. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then a couple more left over to overlap. Is that a good idea? Is it possible, or should we just not think in those terms anymore?
I will say, first of all, that would be a really weird thing to do. That would not be how I would recommend doing it. But yes, you could. Boy, drive partitioning has gotten weird, and it's really great in many ways. It's also it's also just odd. So let's say I got a new hard drive, SSD, whatever, brand new out of the box, plug it into my Mac. All right, what can I do with this? Now, in the old days, what you had to do is say, all right, well, I'm going to format it and I'm going to put 2 partitions on here or 3 partitions or however many. Yeah, I want to devote half of this to my bootable duplicate, and I want to devote half of it to my my version backup. So I'll take however big the drive is, divide that number in half, and I'll make 2 partitions that each have definite sizes. They are this big and no bigger, this big and no bigger. And that's what a partition is. That's what we have all become accustomed to thinking of a partition as a part of your disk, its own name and its own size, and it's just fixed. APFS just blows that model away because you can make an unlimited number of APFS volumes without having to specify how big they are. You can just say, hey, I need a new volume, disk utility, add volume, done. Happens in 30 seconds, you get a new volume. How big is that volume? Well, it looks like it's as big as all of the remaining space on the drive. That's right, it is, because it's of indefinite size. You can make constraints, but you don't have to. So you can just say, I want to have 4 volumes on this APFS drive, and I don't know how big I need them to be. I want to figure that out later. That's fine. Just make however many volumes you want. You want to delete a volume? Great. You don't have to resize volumes because they were never of a definite size in the first place. You can even get weirder. You can have a disk that has a fixed size HFS plus partition and also a fixed size APFS container within which there can be any number of volumes of variable size. So if you want to do the old thing and say, yeah, but I really, I've got this 2 terabyte drive and I just really want for 1 terabyte to be an old-fashioned macOS extended partition, can I just yeah, you can do that. Do that. And then the other terabyte, you can say, it's the freewheeling APFS world. Let's just make however many volumes we want. And as long as they don't collectively add up to more than 1 terabyte once I've, put stuff on them, you're fine. So you can do that.
I think where I was going with that was the idea, again, rooted in the old world, that my Monday backup is there, my Tuesday backup is there. Let's say on Wednesday I discover a virus, malware, a bug or something. Okay, so now I'm in trouble. Now I want to drop back to Tuesday or Monday and restore and pull that in. That was the logic I was using for that.
No, that's outdated logic. I would not suggest doing that. That is in fact the problem that APFS snapshots solve so elegantly. So if you have your external drive and it's got just 1 volume on it, just 1 partition, and hypothetically, you make an APFS snapshot once a day. It's Wednesday and I realize, oh crap, I have a virus. I want to go back to the snapshot from Tuesday. You can either go into the Time Machine interface or go into Carbon Copy Cloner or one of these other apps and say, please give me back this drive the way it appeared in its entirety on Tuesday. You click the button, it says, now it's done. You don't wait. It's not like I have to wait hours to restore this. There's not some big complicated process. It just says, okay, I've flipped a switch. Now I'm using that snapshot instead. Anything else you'd like me to do? So you don't have to manually make separate boxes to put your daily backups in. That's why APFS is so great, is the snapshots let you go back to the entire state the drive was in at any previous moment in time without taking up all this time or all this space. They're really wonderful.
Folks, you really need this book. I really need this book. because it is a new world out there. And Joe, I'm glad we had this conversation. It clears some things up for me. I hope it clears some things up for others. I'm sure there are people out there that are saying, ask Joe this, ask Joe that. And I don't even know what to ask anymore because what you're saying makes perfect sense, but it's a whole new paradigm.
Yeah. And I have this, I always in my books, I have like, what's new in this edition? And I'm looking over here at that list now, and there's, I don't know, 15-ish items in that list. I'd have to count them. I think we've covered 2 of them.
Wow.
So far. So those were like 2 of the biggest things that I think are the most different, like the big new things you have to get used to. But there's so much more. So much has changed in the world of backups. And I know this is going to be painful for people. And I know it's especially going to be painful for people who diligently followed my advice from 2, 3, 10 years ago. They're like, wait a minute, I did the right thing. I know I did the right thing. I did what you told me to do. This has worked fine until now. Don't tell me I gotta get all new hardware and come up with a totally new way of thinking about backups. I'm like, well, it's not me. It's not me. It wasn't. I'm the messenger, right? It was Apple. Apple did stuff. But yeah, you gotta make changes. There's a whole chapter in the book that's like, what if I already had a backup system? Now what do I need to think about? Well, let's walk through that. Let's go through all the things that are new. And I'm sorry that it sucks. I don't want it to suck. I'm not trying to be mean to you by saying you have to redo your backups. We have to adapt to the times in which we live. So if you have an M1 Mac or are about to get one, if you are using Big Sur, there's going to be more stuff that you have to do than if you're still using Mojave, let's say. If you're still using a mechanical hard drive, well, first of all, I'm sorry, and I hope that you can fix that real soon. But you have less to do, but also you won't be able to benefit from the new stuff.
The one thing you said, I don't think this necessarily sucks. I mean, the idea that we have to go through the learning process is not convenient, but it sounds like my data and my production environment and everything really is safer under these circumstances. So I guess I'm trying to look on the bright side that, yeah, for a little bit of the pain that I'm going to suffer, I'm actually gaining a lot.
That's true. I think Apple, in many ways, is trying to save users from themselves. I don't want to say necessarily making Mac OS and the hardware more idiot-proof, but we're human and we make mistakes. And I think that with APFS as an example and with other things too, Apple is trying to make it harder for us to screw up stuff that we are likely to screw up accidentally and make it easier to recover gracefully. And that's even if you don't do anything, there are some options available to you. But if you then go the next step and have good backups, there are even more and better options. So I think you're right. Overall, our data should be safer now than it was before with less effort once you get over this little learning curve.
Right. So tell us about the book. Obviously, takecontrolbooks.com is where you go to get it. What kind of pricing and what kind of upgrades and how's that working for this edition?
I'm willing to accept up to I would say $100 for this book if you'd like to pay that much. We should try that sometime. We should try like pay what you want as long as it's over this amount. So the book is $14.99. Worth many times that in my opinion. Anyway, it's $14.99. If you had the previous edition, and as we always do, if you bought the previous edition in the last several months, you'll get the update for free. But if you bought it longer ago than that, or if you bought the first edition or the second edition, or if you bought one of the earlier books I wrote on Mac backups, then all of those people will be eligible to upgrade for half price, for $750. And I always feel a bit of pain about charging upgrade fees and figuring out is this a $5 upgrade? Is this a $7.50 upgrade? What is the amount? And this was one of those cases where it wasn't quite a total rewrite, but boy, was this a big update. This took so long and so much research and so much experimentation. It's a big update, and so much is new. So it's half price. It's $7.50 if you had one of the other books or the previous version of this, and otherwise $14.99 new.
Great. And of course, TakeControlBooks.com. Where
Right on.
you'll find lots of other great books from Joe and the other Take Control authors you hear from here on MacVoices. But yeah, this one, Joe, this conversation right here was worth $14.99. I mean, there's no question about it. Just having you walk us through some of the more confusing things. And you say this is only 2 of 15 key points in the book. So yeah. Wow.
Well, I'm tempted to say your invoice is in the mail, but my pleasure.
Come back, when the next book is done, or come back anytime just to educate us, because it's always fascinating, it's always useful, and it's always fun.
Thank you very much.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. I can't stress this enough. Go check this out. Backups are no less important. They've just gotten a little more interesting, but Joe will help walk you through it and tell you exactly what to do so you don't have to worry. And that in itself is worth $14.99. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.